and what can we do going forward. So I'd like to give the mic to Ms. Fawzia to welcome everybody.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. And I really want to welcome you all here. And it's an honor and a privilege to have all of you here. एक वक्त था आपसे 20 साल पहले कि हम तन्हा थे. मैं तन्हा थी, मेरी वालदा तन्हा थी, और हम हमें कुछ नहीं पता था कि हम करें तो क्या करें. एक FIR कटवाने के लिए भी साल गुजर गए, धक्के खाते सब करते हुए. आहिस्ता आहिस्ता कारवां बनता गया जो आपको स्क्रीन पे नजर आ रहा है. और ये सब हमारे घर की बेटी को, इस कौम ने, ये अजीम कौम, इसने कौम की बेटी बनाया. हमारे अपने वजीर आजम ने कौम की बेटी कहा. हमारे हर इलेक्शन में कौम की बेटी कहा. और उसके नाम पे आफिया से आफियत के नारे लगे. मगर उस आफियत को कैद में बंद छोड़ा हुआ है और आफियत की तलब करते हैं. क्या हो गया है हमको? But basically, my distinguished guests, and I would like to welcome our former Prime Minister, Shahid Abbasi, Senator Mushtaq Ahmed, Amna Janjua, Brigadier Shahzad Majid. Thank you so much for sparing the time and coming on time, and so that is why we started. We have with us, we're very privileged to have with us Clive Smith, who is Aafia's lawyer. And, there was a statement that the court had made, a statement, a wake-up statement, and that was, कि तारीख लिखेगी और तारीख गवाह है कि एक अमेरिकन ब्रिटिशर वहां से आकर एक मुसलमान बेटी, पाकिस्तानी बेटी के लिए प्रो बोनो काम कर रहा है. और पाकिस्तानी हुकूमत stands before the court spineless and clueless. Those are the words of the court. Yet, has anyone woken up? क्या हो गया है हमें? हमारी गैरत कहाँ चली गई है? So, I want to thank Mr. Clive Smith, who for sparing his time and for coming here, and for and all our distinguished guests who will continue to come. So, I'm also very honored to have with us our Islamabad High Court's Chief Advocate, Imran Shafiq Sahab, who's sitting right there. And we have someone from the Civil Rights Association who's come all the way from Lahore, and Abdullah Mansoor. And so it's an honor to welcome you to this roundtable conference on human rights. I'm privileged to have such esteemed individuals here, each an institution in their own right. I'd like to extend my gratitude to our dedicated volunteers whose tireless efforts made this evening possible. I'm also thrilled to welcome the thousands who have joined this conference online, live streaming throughout the globe. I want to specifically thank Salam Media and our team in South Africa who are running this live right now also. And I would like to thank Team Bangla and Aafia Movement in Bangladesh, who are also running it live, and with Dr. Raza heading the Aafia Movement in Malaysia, also running it live, and Sister Mariam in Turkey, also running it live, and Brother Khizr in Germany, also running it live, and in the US and the UK, and around the globe. So I just wanted to acknowledge them who are all here. And the times are very, very odd. Like it's 5 a.m. and there's so many people out there in the US. And in Pakistan. Pakistan is a country that's founded on principle, on religion. It's one of only 2 countries in the world that was founded on on religion, Israel and Pakistan. Pakistan, la ilaha illallah, right? The principles were of compassion, mercy, and justice. And isn't this ironic that we need to convene on human rights in the Islamic Republic of Pakistan? Our constitution enshrines protections for citizens, and Islam emphasizes justice and equality and love for all. Yet we face pressing issues like enforced disappearances, arbitrary arrests, torture, and extrajudicial killings. And we have Sister Amna Janjua here, who I'm always very proud to introduce and to welcome, who is now the face of enforced disappearances. So why these contradictions persist? Why do we have such a wonderful constitution that gives us every right we can imagine? Yet, we are having to convene on human rights. Why do truth tellers face consequences? Why is it when we stand up for our right, we have to face consequences? Today, we'll explore these questions and focus on finding solutions. Though cases like Dr. Aafia Siddiqui's, through cases like Dr. Aafia Siddiqui, we will examine the challenges and potential paths forward. The first step towards healing is acknowledging the problem. As a doctor, we always try to make the diagnosis first. And once we know the diagnosis, we know where to go. We know where we're headed. So we do know the problems. Let us today work together to identify concrete steps towards more just and equitable society. Let us make Pakistan great. You know, as President Trump says, I'm here to make America great. Aafia movement has started this movement to make Pakistan great, inshallah. Thank you very much, and I welcome you all, and I'm really grateful for all of you to spare your time who have come here once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Fawzia. And thank you, everyone, every one of our esteemed guests who have joined us today and been on time and here to participate and contribute to this movement. My name is Advocate Aafia Siddiqui. I will be guiding and moderating sort of the session today and directing the flow of information. However, while I specifically address different attendees and ask them particular questions, the floor is always open. And if you want to contribute and say something as a follow-up to what some other speaker is saying, please feel free to ask for a mic, and one of our volunteers will inshallah provide a mic to you. So let me introduce the man who will primarily be presiding today's discussion, which is Mr. Clive Stafford. He's a British-American human rights activist and one of the most powerful and notable social cause lawyers in the world at the moment. He is founder of the organization called Reprieve, which is primarily designed to do similar work. And over the course of Mr. Smith's 40-year career, he has sued the United States president about 88 times, I'm told, and lost only once. I'm also told that. And he's won 5 out of 5 Supreme Court cases, and he has secured the release of 87 Guantanamo Bay prisoners, detainees, which is why he's extremely, extremely relevant and a well-equipped person to handle this matter for us. He's handled around 400 death penalty cases and played a key role in abolishing the juvenile death penalty in the United States. He has been awarded the Ghazni International Peace Award in 2005 and the Order of the British Empire Knighthood by the Queen herself for his fearless commitment to human rights and justice. His life's work is centered around justice and human rights and defending those who have no one to fight for them. I thank you, Mr. Clive, for being here with us, and I would like to hand over the ceremony for some time to you so that you apprise everybody of what has happened, why we're here, what is the root cause that led to everything that caused us to be here today. Thank you.
Okay, how's this one? All right. Well, look, thank you very much for all that nonsense. Don't listen to her. It's not work anyhow. It's a great joy. And I just want to begin by saying first, it's great to be among people who I've run across many times over the years. And I want to actually begin by just mentioning 3 times I have come, well, I've come to Pakistan dozens of times, but 3 times in particular. I came here first when I was representing the Guantanamo Bay prisoners. And, that was against the most powerful person on earth. That was George Bush. And he's lost. We've got 98% of the prisoners out of Guantanamo Bay. And it's no thanks to me. I'm not taking credit for all of it. But it's because everyone worked together to bring that ridiculous system down. Second time I want to mention was actually the first time I came to the Margala, which was, I forget when exactly, it was about 2015, at the height of the American drone war, where we, the Americans, were killing endless people in Waziristan, huge numbers of people who were innocent. And we had a jirga here in the Margala, which was great, actually. I really loved it. And 4 years later, the Americans had stopped droning people in Pakistan. And I think that shows the power of people working together towards a common cause. And I do want to just say I've also been part of various things with Amina over here. And it's a great privilege to be back on that, on missing persons, which we've got a lot more work to do on, of course. But we're going to talk a bit about that today. Now, I would second what you said, that interrupt at any moment, heckle, throw things, I don't care. But it's much more fun if we have a conversation. So if you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to act. And I want to begin by confessing that I am what is called an OPWM. Now, a lot of you won't know what that means because I made it up. But it means old privileged white male. And I know I was born into immense privilege. And indeed, if I didn't do what my mother told me to do, she'd strike me down from heaven where she is now. But we're all privileged. Everyone who in this room thinks she or he is not privileged. You're all privileged comparatively compared to other people around you. It is impossible to look around you in society and not see people who are far, far worse off than we are. And the job of everyone in this room, no one excluded, is the job that my mother tasked me with, which is to look around and protect the vilified minority, the small group of people that people love to hate. And let's face it, deranged Donald, our current president of the United States, is a past master of hating people. And our job is to bring power to the powerless. And there is no one in this room who doesn't have power that can be used in that. And in terms of looking around at the hated people, look, I started for the first 20 years of my career in America just doing death penalty cases. I know people differ in their opinions on that. I'm not going to give an inch that I don't think it's a good thing. I think it's an uncivilized, barbaric thing. But I want you to think about the people that we put on death row. In just 3 years in New Orleans, my office had 171 capital cases. We were able to prove that 126 of those people were innocent. That's 73.7%. You're better off tossing a coin than you are expecting to get justice sometimes in our justice system. And these are all people who were so hated that the government thought we should take them out and just kill them. And I've had to watch 6 of my clients die in the gas chamber, the electric chair, the lethal injection chamber. And let me tell you, it'll never leave me. It's disgusting when we do that. And we're here to protect and defend people like that. Do you mind just moving that just away from, I'm sorry to do that to you, Mr. Cameraman, but you're just blocking the view a little bit. This is an easy question. Which country in the world has the most people on death row? I have a vote for the US here. I'm afraid that's wrong, surprisingly. Do you know the country it is? No, it's not. It's Pakistan. Pakistan has more people on death row than any other country in the whole world. The government says there are 1,143. The Justice Project to Pakistan in Lahore says there are 3,646. And the real figure, by estimates by a number of places, is over 8,000 people on death row in this country. And I was having coffee with a judge in Lahore one time, and we were talking about what reasonable doubt meant. And he said that he thought beyond a reasonable doubt was about 60% sure. You know, this is just totally mad, right? And then I asked him, well, if you, and he said, we have 60% because the evidence is such rubbish that otherwise we couldn't convict anyone. Not a really good rationale. And indeed, he then went on, when I pressed him about how many of these 8,500 people odd who apparently are on death row are innocent, he said he thought 60% of the people he had convicted and sent to death row were probably innocent. Now, this is shocking. And I say that, and I put America first because we're just as bad. Let's face it, I'm not sitting here preaching to anyone that we're better. But I want you to think about this all the way through as we talk about human rights and as we talk about Aafia and so forth. And the next thing is when you look at Guantanamo Bay. When I brought the very first lawsuit against Guantanamo Bay on February the 19th, 2002. And it was fun, you know, it was my idea of great fun, is suing George Bush for doing that. But I really thought that when I went down to Guantanamo, I would be having to make a lot of explanations. You know, the President Bush said that these are all the worst of the worst people. They're all bad men. And I thought, you know, he's going to make mistakes. But the bottom line is probably a lot of these guys were fighting America in Afghanistan. Whether they had a right to fight in Afghanistan's a different question. But since we began, there have been 780 detainees in Guantanamo who everyone vilified and said were evil, the worst of the worst terrorists in the world. We have so far cleared or removed from there 768 of those people. And to get them out of Guantanamo, we have to convince all 6 of the top American intelligence agencies, the CIA, the FBI, all these other people, that these people are no threat to anyone. And so in all of those 768 cases, the US powers that be have admitted they were wrong. It's not me saying it, it's them saying it. And that's a 98.46% error rate. They got it wrong 98.5% of the time. I was flying to Guantanamo one time on British Airways, and I asked the stewardess on the plane, would you take an aircraft that arrived at the wrong airport 98.5% of the time, or perhaps crashed 98% of the time? And she said, no, it's horrific. This is the problem we deal with when we forget about due process and human rights. We forget how incredibly bad the government is at getting the people that they say are so bad. And it took me a long time to figure this out. And I'm going to have a little quiz with you people. I want to ask you, put your hand up, and I'm going to look at you, and I bet a lot of you are going to lie. I'm offering you $250,000 to look at the person on your right and say that guy or that woman was in Tora Bora in October 2001. Who's going to take $250,000 from me for doing that? And if you don't put your hand up, I'm looking at you, you're lying, aren't you? I know you would, wouldn't you? Because you're sitting next to me. You'd take the $250,000. This is why, one of the reasons why so many people ended up there, that we, the Americans, were dropping these leaflets around Afghanistan and Pakistan, offering money for people to turn people in who they didn't know, who were just, to them, they were just foreigners with beards or whatever. And again, this is one of the reasons we make these mistakes so often. And all of this is a precursor to talking about this woman here, who's the main event of all of this. Because so many people, you got this little thing in front of you, some of you, which is the horrifying case of Dr. Aafia Siddiqui, myths versus facts. So much of what they say about Aafia is total nonsense. And I took the case on just 2.5 years ago because, let's face it, if you're ever in trouble, you want to have this woman over here as your sister. And she had been, yeah, well, I'll give her a round of applause. And she had been trying to bully me to do this for a while. And I'd just got 3 of my Guantanamo guys out in Pakistan. So I thought, oh, you know, what the heck? I've got extra time. Another of those ridiculous concepts. So I was in Texas, and I went to see Aafia. And if you meet this poor woman, you cannot help but want to help her. I have done over 150 of these secret prisons cases, and I got to tell you, I thought they couldn't shock me anymore. I was wrong. I've had people I've represented, including this British guy, Binyam Mohammed, where the Americans took him to Morocco and took a razor blade to his genitals every 2 weeks for a year and a half. I thought they couldn't beat that, and I was wrong in this case. So what I want to do is I'm going to go through this, and I know a lot of you know a lot of these facts, but I've just come back from Afghanistan, where I've been for the 5th time. I love that country, but it's the only country in the world where I represented half of the government when they were in Guantanamo Bay. And I got to say, I get treated very well in Afghanistan. And they've been incredibly helpful in reaching the truth about what happens to Aafia. And when you think about getting to the truth, there are all sorts of people who need to help us. And, you know, there's Aafia herself, there's obviously Fawzia, who does so much. It's you, the Pakistan people, the Pakistan government, which frankly is being totally useless at the moment, the US, the world. But then the really most important people that we're talking to today is you. Because everyone in this room, put your hand up if you think you don't have a talent that can help Aafia. I'm not going to give you the chance to put your hand up, because you all do. And then you have to think about what it is in the talents that you have that can do so much good. And, you know, lawyers always think we're the most important people in the world. Isn't that right, Imran? And it's total nonsense. Lawyers are only one very tiny part of the cog. Investigators, people who seek out facts, are far more important. People who make films are far more important. The court of public opinion releases far more people than the court of law. Of the Guantanamo prisoners I've represented, 87 of them, one of them got out through a court order. The other 86 got out because I went into Guantanamo Bay, I got the truth out, I published it in the papers, and we embarrassed the American government so much they had to let them go. The court of public opinion is vastly more important, which is why we're making an Al Jazeera film about Aafia right now. And by the way, your government wouldn't give them a visa to come to this country, which I think is fairly shameful. And then the other thing, the other power is the pen. The pen is far mightier than the sword or the lawyer's tongue, frankly. And there's no one here who can't write stories or write whatever you want to write about Aafia to help her. So let's just go through her case. As you know, she was going to Islamabad from Karachi. She had 3 kids. This is what really sets it about. I mean, you don't have to be a parent to understand this, but I'm a parent, and lots of us are parents. And the concept of being abducted with your children and having your children abused against you, you know, to get you to say things is just disgusting. One thing I want you to just remember about this trip to the airport that Aafia was taking, she was going to do some education work here in Islamabad. And she was having an argument with Ahmed, her son, who was 6, because they were flying and he wanted to go by train because Thomas the Tank Engine was his favorite book. It's that sort of detail that's really important. You could write a whole book about Thomas the Tank Engine and what this case is all about. Now, what we got to do when we're using power to help the powerless is we got to figure out how to screw over the powerful people who think that they should carry on holding it. And, you know, it's really easy. I love this. This is my sport, is figuring out how to really mess with the American government and make them behave themselves. It's really fun. And Ahmed is the first person. And I was in Kabul just a couple of days ago and took this picture. That's the prison that we can prove that Ahmed was held in Kabul. How many people here believe the government's story, the Pakistan government's tale, that Ahmed was not ever in prison, he was never being tortured by the Americans, he wasn't taken there by the CIA? How many people believe that? It's total nonsense, right? And we're going to go through all of them, but that's the prison that the US helped build, that he was held in. And a part of it is where I believe, I can't prove this yet, but I'm going to, that Aafia was raped twice. And I want you to let that sink in for a minute, that she was in a room with 2 Afghan women. These these Afghan soldiers were raping them. And at one point, they tied their wrists together, the three of these women. And when this guy came in to do it again, they took him down and beat him up. And no one in this room can feel that that wasn't a good thing to do, right? But probably in that very building is where that happened. And I want you to just take that home with you today. The second person is Mariam, of course. You've got to remember that Mariam and Ahmed were both US citizens. They both have what I got here, which is an American passport. And it's the American government, the CIA, that are taking these two little children to a war zone 1,000 kilometers from Karachi. And this is what we're going to do to them about Mariam, because it's great, right? Just yesterday, a couple of my friends talked to this chap here. Who's that guy? Yeah, Hamid Karzai. He's the witness to what happened to Mariam. And if you don't believe me, you can talk to him, and he's going to be our witness. Because when Fawzia met him here in Islamabad in 2010 and told him the story, he went back to Kabul and said to the Americans, you've got to give this little girl Mariam back. And the Americans did. And he said that the Americans brought Mariam to the secret police headquarters, which is right next to the Kabul airport, turned her over to him. And when he asked them where's she been, they refused to say. Now, if that's not good enough for you to believe that she was being held by the Americans all those 7 years, I don't know what is. But here's something else. We've always known that she was held by a white Christian American family. Put your hand up if you agree with the Americans that it's far better to be a white Christian American than a Pakistani Muslim of color. And put your hand up if you believe what the Americans believe, which is you can't go to heaven unless you're a white Christian American. It's just madness, right? But these two people, Josh and Natasha, had Mariam for 7 years almost. That guy on the right there, I think, is Josh. He was killed in 2008 in Afghanistan. And we got a line on who it really was who held them all this time. And that's what investigation is all about. And that's what political embarrassment is about for the Americans when we prove that. Now, the third one is Suleiman. Now, here's a question for you. If you're a parent and, or you've got someone in your family who's disappeared for 21 years, would you rather have closure by knowing that little child's dead, or would you rather cling to help, thinking that maybe that child's alive? Who would want closure rather than after 21 years? Who would want, you can't not answer. I'm watching you, so you got to answer one way or the other. Would you want closure or hope? Who's voting for closure?
Let's also ask in Urdu. कितने लोग ये चाहेंगे कि बेबी सुलेमान जो है, यानी कि कोई भी माँ, उसका अगर बच्चा खो जाए, तो वो क्या चाहेगी कि उसको पता लग जाए कि वो जिंदा है या मरा हुआ है, या कुछ नहीं पता चले? कितने लोग चाहेंगे कि उन्हें पता लग जाए कि वो जिंदा है या मरे हुए? हाथ उठाएं सब लोग.
Okay, which is this one? This is closure. And who wants to cling to hope that that child is still alive? Who's voting for hope? Yeah. I'd want hope, frankly. But this is the thing. When first they told me about Suleiman, I didn't believe he was still alive. I thought that's just hope against hope is silly. But then you learned what happened to Mariam, and you learn that the United States abducted 1,250 little children from Afghanistan just in the last year that we were in Afghanistan. And as I'm doing a project, I'm coming back to Afghanistan in September to try and help reunite these children with their families, because that's all awful. So you begin to think, wow, if they did that with all these people, maybe they did that with Suleiman. So one of the projects we're doing in this documentary is we're going to have a program called Searching for Suleiman, because that's a picture of what he'd look like now. And all of these people in America who have been forcibly adopted into a white Christian American family don't know who their family is. And they're going to be wondering, right? Is anyone here adopted? Put your hand up. I'm not adopted, but if you are, probably you have some interest in who your biological family is. And we're going to put this all over America with the pictures of what Suleiman would look at every age. And it'll be a program called Searching for Suleiman. And it's going to go viral, because this is empathy. And when you're representing people, you mustn't deal with sympathy. You've got to deal with empathy, because that's what gets people to care. So that's what we'll do to embarrass the heck out of America on Suleiman. And then there's Aafia. I was at Bagram just about 4 or 5 days ago, and that's a picture of Bagram on your right. And she was taken there, and your government lied about it for years, I'm sorry to say, and has lied, saying that she was never abducted and taken there. She was. I've got scores of witnesses on it now. There are 3 places she was held. I've found 2 of them, and I'm about to find the 3rd. One is the actual main floor in what's called the ISO unit, the place they took people who they really didn't like in the main Bagram. She was in there. I filmed it. I think I got a picture of it here somewhere. No, it's later on. And I've been there with people who saw Aafia and knew it was her. And indeed, an American soldier told one of them. I took a statement just yesterday morning from someone here in Islamabad who's very respectable, who was in Bagram, and an American soldier told him that the person in there was Aafia Siddiqui, a terrorist from Pakistan. Then there's an underground prison in Bagram where she was held for a while. And then there was another one. This was the guy who first got us onto this, Salim Kuche. Kuche means nomad, and Salim, I love him dearly. He really, really doesn't like obeying rules. So he spent a lot of time in the ISO unit, the isolation unit. And he was the first one who identified her. This is a picture of a guy called Tapu in where the isolation unit was, where he saw her and talked to her. And, that's not what it looked like. They were little coffins that they were 2 meters long and 1 meter wide, that people were held in for weeks and sometimes months at a time. And they were through this room. That precise room is where it happened, in Bagram Air Force Base. And we filmed all of that with Tapu and others. This was the problem. She was in Bagram. We know that now. It's undeniable. She was also in another prison. And what happened is what happened to so many people I've represented over the years. We as the Americans detained these folk. We kidnapped them. We tortured them. We thought they were going to give us valuable intelligence. We finally worked out after 4 or 5 years with so many people that they weren't anybody, and that they really didn't know anything, and torturing them achieved absolutely nothing. And then, as the United States, we were faced with the dilemma. What do we do with these people? Now, the dilemma with Aafia was much greater, ironically, because of you people, because you had made her well-known. She was well-known in Pakistan. If you remember July 2008, it was coming to the end of Musharraf's regime, and he was teetering about to lose power. But obviously he was still in power, and people in power don't like to give it up, and he didn't want to give it up. But if Aafia had been returned to Pakistan then, that would have been the end of Musharraf, right? And I'm not saying he was the one who did it, because very often it's just these people's henchmen. But they had to come up with what we in America euphemistically call a disposal plan. And I'm pretty convinced I know who organized this disposal plan. And I've got one of your ISI agents has given me an affidavit about it. I'm not going to tell you who it is. Obviously, it'll get him in trouble. But just if you think for a minute that all of this stuff's nonsense, I've got one of the ISI agents telling me what happened. And it's under oath, and it's going to be in an American court very soon. And they had to get rid of Aafia somehow. And what they wanted to do is what they did to a number of the people I've tried to help, which was they wanted to kill her. It's just that simple. But they wanted to kill her in a way that would have made her look like a really evil terrorist. And this is what they did. I'm going to tell you exactly what they did. They said to her she could have her son. Now, Ahmed, for the previous 5 years, had been in a prison, told that his name was Ihsan Ali, and if he ever said he was Ahmed, son of Aafia, they'd kill him. And so even when they gave Ihsan Ali, aka Ahmed, to Aafia, he wouldn't tell his mum that she was his mum. And she was in a full chador they'd dressed her up in, and she didn't know whether he was her boy. He really didn't. What they put Ahmed in, though, was in the middle of July in Afghanistan, when it was very hot. They put him in a coat, a winter coat, with 4 big pockets. And in those big pockets were big pieces of fruit. Now, why did they do that? Anyone like to tell me? Come on, this is easy. This is just a little game. Why did they do that to Ahmed?
They wanted him to look like a suicide bomber.
That's exactly right. They wanted him to look like a suicide bomber. 2 days before July the 17th, someone had made a call to Ghazni saying, there's going to be a female suicide bomber come to Ghazni and blow herself up. Yeah, and blow herself up outside the mosque, outside the Jihad Mosque, which I've been to several times. And so they called ahead to say they were coming. Now, of course, if you're a suicide bomber, you don't just take a coat with fruit in it, right? You take a suicide jacket. And so, that's one thing, She went to the wrong mosque. She went to this mosque here, the Khalid bin Walid Mosque, which I've been to many times now. And she sat outside that mosque for 7 hours. She got there at about 2 o'clock on the 17th of July, 2008. And she sat outside this mosque for 7 hours waiting, because she had been told that they were going to deliver her daughter, Mariam, to her there, and then she could happily go back to Pakistan. That was a lie. That was never going to happen. They were meant to have killed her by now, but they're so inept that everyone went to the wrong mosque. So then what happens next? This guy, let's have a vote here. Who thinks that guy's Afghan? Who thinks that guy's Pakistani? Put your hand up. Come on, you got to have an opinion. Who thinks Afghan? Put your hand up. Pakistani? Put your hand up. No, all right. He's Pakistani. Of course he is. That's the guy who was on the bus with her from Kabul with a bag of evidence that was meant to be planted on her when she was killed by the Afghan National Police. I don't know why people write novels that are fiction. It requires an imagination. You don't need to do that. You just need to come up with what the Americans and the Pakistani Secret Service do. These people are crazy. And I've written several books, and I just rely on the mad things they do, because I don't have to have an imagination anymore. I just have to tell you what happened. What was going to happen was she was going to be sitting outside the mosque when the ANP showed up. Their standard operating procedure was to ring them at 100 feet. Then they start yelling at them and they would shoot her, because they don't negotiate with suicide bombers. Then they were going to discover the stuff that he was going to plant on her, which was a number of things that later were used to trial, which we'll talk about in a minute. The reason that didn't happen was because of this guy here. He's one of my all-time heroes, Mohammed Ajmal Mohammadi. He was a tailor in Ghazni, and he was sitting in his tailor shop right across the street from the mosque. And he was doing his work for hours. And various people approached Aafia, but she only spoke Urdu and English, and they all spoke Farsi, and they couldn't communicate. Now, finally, it was getting dark. It was getting after 7 p.m., and it was getting dark. And Mohammadi went out there because he'd seen all these people trying to talk to her. And he went out to her, and he did his tailoring in Pakistan. So he speaks Urdu. And he was able to communicate with her. And he told her, it's really getting dark. This is a war zone. You shouldn't hang around here. You can go stay with my mother. Bring your son along with you. And they were having this discussion. Aafia said to him, no, they're going to bring my daughter to me here. And so they were having this conversation when these guys showed up. 42 Afghan paramilitary police with their AK-47s. And they ringed her and they were screaming at her. And she couldn't understand because they were all shouting in Farsi. And they were going to shoot her. And the only reason she's alive today is because of that man, Mohammadi. Because he's a great, I love that guy. And he's going to be the hero of this film that we're making. Because he stood in front of her and he said, you can't shoot this woman. She's not a suicide bomber. And that's why they didn't shoot her. And then some guy ran around behind Aafia to see if she had a suicide vest under her chador, ripped off her chador. And sure enough, she didn't. That so pissed Mohammadi off that they did that. He thought that was so offensive to a woman in his country. And I love this more than anything, actually. On the spot, he quit being a tailor and he went and joined the Mujahideen. That's what happens when we behave that badly. We inspire people to be our enemies. Now, he's a senior member of the Taliban now. He's a delightful guy. And he's been incredibly helpful to me. I just got a message. Who is it who was helping me it was in Pashto and was helping me translate the message he just sent me over there. Thank you very much. I just wish I wasn't so ignorant. I do speak some other languages. I just don't speak any that are useful here. All right. So then she's taken to the Afghan National Police headquarters. That's the room where she was shot. They had all told me two things. No one in Ghazni would talk to me, and I would never find where it happened because it had all been blown up and whatever. Totally wrong. Everyone talked to me. I got 6 witnesses in 3 hours in Ghazni who had witnessed her being there. And then this time when I was in Ghazni just a few days ago, this nice young chap who, by the way, was a police officer in Ghazni and had just named his daughter Aafia after Aafia. He took me to that room and I said, yeah, that's the room. That's the room. That's the door over on the left there where there was a little side room. And that's the very room where Aafia was shot. It didn't look like that. There was a curtain across it and she was behind the curtain and the Americans come in at this end. So now I'm just going to tell you what happened. So she's there for 24 hours and they interrogate her and they discover she is a terrible criminal. She doesn't have a visa for being in Afghanistan. That's the crime that the Afghans thought she had committed, and they were going to let her go. But the Americans hear that the whole thing had gone wrong, and they come flocking into Ghazni, and they demand to see her. And so they come into the police headquarters. They've been told they can't talk to her. We do what we do best as Americans. What's that? What do you think the Americans did? Sorry? No, we bribed them, obviously. I mean, that's obviously what we do. Yeah, we bribed them. That's what we did. So we bribed the police chief, and the police chief let us go up to that room, the American soldiers. And this is what Aafia tells me, and it's the obvious truth, that she's behind the curtain. She hears these American voices. She thinks, oh, my goodness, they're going to take me back for more torture. She peeks around the curtain, and one of them shoots her, saying she's on the loose, and shoots her. That's what really happened. Now we'll talk about what the Americans say, which is unfortunately total nonsense. So the Americans say that they all came into the room, that they did what any soldier does in a war zone. One of them put his M4 machine gun on the ground, and then she reached under the curtain, grabbed the M4 machine gun, flipped off the safety catch and started shooting. Now put your hand up if you know where the safety catch is on an M4 rifle. No, maybe some of you do. I don't. I do now because I went and looked, but I had no idea. How many people honestly think you could pick up a machine gun, immediately flip the safety catch off and start shooting before the Americans shoot you? No way. Now, the problem, and this is when the American soldiers shot her, right? Shot us twice in the stomach. The problem with their whole little story is there's always evidence. And the evidence goes like this. In that room, there were 2 holes up in the wall, which the Americans said were the 2 bullet holes of the bullets that went past them when she was shooting. One of the soldiers actually says that she saw the bullet go past her. And I think we're going to have to label her, superwoman, because her eyesight's a lot better than mine. But you would expect to find evidence, right? Now, they found 2 cartridges of a 9mm pistol. So we know that it's true that they shot her with a pistol. They didn't find, let's see what they did find. They found no M4 bullets. They had the bullet holes that they said were there. But we got a video from earlier that day, and those 2 holes are already there, because they were not holes from bullets. They were holes from hanging pictures. And, you'd find, if there were bullets in there, you'd find the bullets. They didn't find them. They didn't find any bullet parts. You'd always find little fragments of bullet parts. They found none of that. No shell casings, no gunshot residue, no fingerprints, no nothing. So who's going to vote that the Americans are telling the truth here? Not a lot of you. I thought not. So look, this is what goes on then. And first, you've got to think the big picture here, right? I was talking to this guy just yesterday who was in Bagram, and he was telling me about all the people he knew in Bagram who had actually killed American soldiers and were quite proud of it and admitted it, right? And how many of them got prosecuted for any criminal offense? The answer is 0. There's not a single person who was put on trial for actually killing an American soldier. Now, you know, honestly, I don't like guns. I don't like warfare. I think it's all a very bad idea. But if I invade your country, as the British did 3 times, the Russians, not to the Afghans, the Russians once and the Americans once, you have a right to fight back, presumably. But we didn't prosecute any people for actually killing someone. We prosecute Aafia Siddiqui for what we say is attempted murder when she's the only person who gets shot, and we give her 86 years. I mean, on a very fundamental level, that's absurd. Now, they took her to New York City to try her. Why did they take her to New York City, someone? Why? This crime, if it was a crime, happened in Ghazni, Afghanistan. Why'd they take her to New York? Now, it's because that's where 9/11 happened. They took her to New York and they tried her in the Southern District of New York, which is 9/10 of a mile from ground zero. That's why they took her to New York. And she had no witnesses. Her lawyers were paid by your government $2 million. One of them said that that's how he bought his Lamborghini. Now, the problem with that was they had an obvious conflict of interest. To give them their due, they couldn't really investigate. There was a war going on. They weren't able to get any witnesses from Afghanistan. But they also didn't put any evidence on about how Aafia had been abducted and with her children. And you got to think that part of that conflict has to do with the fact who was paying them, right? I'm not sure that your government would really be happy to pay them $2 million if they said, well, actually, they're really bad people here with the Pakistanis. So anyway, she had no defense, and they had 6 American soldiers, and they had an Afghan interpreter who was given a green card and a large amount of money for testifying. Okay, put your hand up if you testify against me, if they promise to give you a green card and lots of cash. Come on, put your hand up. You'd love, yeah, you would, wouldn't you? No, I'm not going to go anywhere near her. Anyway, but you're honest. That's good. This is how they convict her, right? In front of a jury that's just near 9/11, and by getting all their witnesses there. And these are the things we can. I'm going to run through these quickly because I'm going on much too long. I do apologize. But I'm going to go through what we tried. We tried clemency. I've never got clemency from the President of the United States, but it was worth a shot. And he was pardoning his Fatah family at the time. But at 15 minutes before he ended being president, that was 11:45 a.m. on January the 20th of this year, he sent me a letter to the wrong address saying he wasn't going to give clemency to Aafia Siddiqui. I mean, that was disgusting, right? After all the other things he'd done. But we got lots of other things we can do. So these are some ones, and I want you to start asking some serious questions of your government as to precisely who it is in Pakistan who thinks it's more important that you should keep Shakil Afridi in prison in this country than it is that you should get Aafia free.
I want Shakil Afridi here.
You want him in?
Yes.
If I give you, if I give you a choice though, that you can keep him here and
Shakil Afridi has to be here.
And what are you going to do about Aafia?
No deal. Aafia Afridi has own merit.
Well, I don't know.
Aafia Afridi has her own merit to be released, but not a deal with the Shakil Afridi.
Well, okay.
It is a terrorism created by Shakil Afridi, and he cannot be released. Even 1,000 people are to be released in America. Well,
there's an interesting issue. I respectfully disagree with you, but there you go. That's the question, and we got one answer there, and I appreciate you standing up for it because that's good, right? It's much more fun if you have people who say their opinions. That's one thing. Regardless of what our gentleman over here thinks, we may well work this out, but actually I've got a better deal for him because the Afghans are willing to do an exchange themselves of one of the prisoners they've got for Aafia Siddiqui, not for Aafia to come to Afghanistan, but for her to go to a hospital where she deserves, where she needs to be in another country. The second thing we can do is a motion for compassionate
Who do
release.
the Afghans have?
They've got quite a few people, and they've been swapping them left, right, and center.
Who are they willing to offer for Aafia?
Well, they've got some Americans.
You see, prisoner swaps have been going on since, I mean, we're the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, and our Prophet did prisoner swaps.
Yes.
So, I mean,
The gentleman here is framing it as a matter of national security.
yeah.
No, and I.
It has their own merits. Like, would you argue that it's a fair exchange?
It's not
Well-
about fair exchange, it's about prisoner to prisoner. It's
The-
doctor for doctor.
I tell you what, I
It's
might.
very fair.
Who would expose the Pakistani state in a more embarrassing light? Dr. Afridi when he goes to America, or Dr. Aafia Siddiqui when she comes?
Well, I mean, look, it's interesting, isn't it? And what the Americans think, and you may disagree with me on this, is what Afridi did was help the Americans to get bin Laden, right?
Right.
Now, again, I'm not in favor of assassinating people. I'm not in favor, allegedly, but I think it's a little more than allegedly. And, you know, what the Americans did was they came into Abbottabad. Now, I find it very, very, very hard to believe that bin Laden was in Abbottabad for all those years and no one knew about it. I think that's deeply incredible. And it is my opinion, and again, I might be wrong on this, and I welcome people to disagree, that half of the ISI doesn't know what the other half's doing half the time. And we know, and the Americans do this too, we funded bin Laden. We're currently funding ISIS in Afghanistan because we want to destabilize Afghanistan. This is mad what the Americans are doing, but I think everyone's been guilty of that. So what the Americans want is they want to bring him there because he helped them kill the biggest criminal in the history of the world, according to the Americans. You can understand the American perspective. I understand this gentleman's perspective. We'll see. I'm going to work it out one way or the other. I don't care what people think in the end. I'm going to get her out regardless. But it may well be that I don't get what I'm asking from you, sir, and that's all right. We'll get it one way or the other. So the next thing is a motion for compassionate release. The great thing about that is we go to a judge who's an elderly 80-year-old liberal Jewish guy in New York. Now, judges are not my best friends normally, but this guy, I think, is going to be very, very angry when we prove to him that he was lied to by the CIA and the FBI. He said at the beginning of the trial that if it was true that Aafia was abducted with her children, that would put the whole case in a different perspective, because if she was a kidnap victim, she could shoot anyone she wanted. That's the law. If you're under kidnap, you can shoot anyone. Now, I'm not in favor of that either. I'd rather ask them to let me go. But the bottom line is that's the law. And when he hears what we can now prove, I think he's going to be pissed off. And I think he's going to issue a subpoena to the CIA to come and explain themselves. And when that happens, Aafia leaves the country. The next thing we've got, she's in a prison. When I went to see her, I've been to almost every death row in America. There are dozens of them. I've been to Guantanamo 42 times. The prison she's in is worse than any other prison I've ever been to. And she's been raped there twice. She's sexually abused constantly. If you don't believe me, there have been 12 convicted staff in that prison for sexual abuse and rape, including a Christian minister. And it's got the highest rate of complaints about sexual abuse in the whole United States. So, we got to get her out of there. We've already sued the prison. That's pending. And, it's interesting the way we as Americans categorize things. Well, this is just a silly question for you. Who thinks we're most likely to win on the fact that you can't go raping prisoners? Who thinks denial of medical care, but she's never been allowed a doctor, is the one you'd win on? Denial of the media in there, or denial of access to an imam? Who thinks that the most serious issue is that we're raping her in a prison in America? Put your hand up if that's the most serious. It's not the one we're going to win on. We're going to win on the imam one because, in America, we're totally deranged that we can execute someone. We can do all these terrible things to them, but you can't execute them without their Christian minister holding their hand. It's really fascinating how we have things slightly muddled up in the US. But we will prevail on a number of those things. Now, then the court of public opinion is by far the most important. These are two Al Jazeera people in that very room where Aafia was shot in interviewing the head of the anti-terror squad in Afghanistan last week. And we're going to spread around all of this stuff. Now we get to I'm coming to the end, don't worry. I know you're very grateful that it's coming to the end. But the real issue here is, what are you going to do about it? Right? I'm doing my bit. And, you know, I love to do it. And it's a privilege to represent her. And I love that. Fauzia is doing her bit. There are lots of other people who are doing their part. The question is what each of you are going to do. We got to get Imam Omar Suleiman in to see her. Anyone who has friends who are imams, you need to help us. You need to get involved, and you need to start sending what's called an amicus brief. You need to intervene in the case, saying you're outraged that America won't let her have her own imam. A doctor. Any of you doctors here? Put your hand up if you're a doctor. Oh, you're a doctor. You've been quite helpful already. We need doctors to intervene, saying it is abominable that they haven't given her health care for the last 16 years, and she's lost all one row of teeth, she's deaf in one ear, and so forth. We'll get journalists in, and if we don't, we're going to have a story about how they're not allowed to get in, just to make them look bad. We need to make what's happening in that prison a national and international story. We need to figure out how to approach Judge Berman and get him to show compassion. You can write to Aafia. You can write a letter to that email, lettersforafia@gmail.com. That'll come to me. I then send them in to Aafia in legal mail, and these letters go to her. And you mustn't say, I feel sorry for you, Aafia. You got to say, I feel inspired by you. Because then when she's being abused in that prison, she reads them to the abusers, and it gives her strength and fortitude. So you need to do that. And then you can give some funds to the whole thing. This is actually the wrong one. I should put theirs up, but it's the only one I had. I mean, this is quite expensive stuff, so you need to help the Aafia movement to get it done. And that's it, really, from me. That's more than enough. I know I've gone on for far too long, but there we go.
Thank you very much, Clive. From what I gather from your entire talk, it's a wonderful story, but it's a horrific life, and somebody has lived it and is still living it to this day. With that said, I'd like to open the floor for discussion, and I would, my first question that I would like to pose. We have Mr. Shahid Abbasi with us, former Prime Minister of Pakistan. Shahid Saab, you are a veteran politician and you've over 35 years of political experience. You've also been an advocate of upholding the rule of law, and mashallah, you know, you've held a position in the National Assembly for 7 times. My question to you would be twofold. For my first question, I'd like to quote a snippet from a letter that Mr. Nawaz Sharif wrote to the Prime Minister Yusuf Raza Gilani on 9th November 2008. And the words of the letter say a lot of things, but in between, I'd like to quote this. The illegal and concealed confinement of Dr. Aafia Siddiqui is an example of human rights violations meted out to the citizens of Pakistan on an international level. It is a blackening stigma on the honor of the nation when one of its women is undergoing such despicable trauma for a crime unknown. This incident calls for instantaneous action. Her case should be highlighted at the United Nations, as her illegal confinement is a blatant violation of human rights. Now, if that's the official stance of the sitting government, my humble concern and curiosity is, why are we not doing what the letter said back in 2008? Why are we not highlighting it at United Nations Forum, UNHRC Forum, other international platforms? And a follow-up question to that is, mashallah, you now have your own party called the Awam Pakistan, and Awam literally means public, you know. The mandate, I'm assuming, would be for the citizens of Pakistan. On who more would be a citizen than the daughter of the nation, Dr. Aafia? So in light of your manifesto, what can be done going forward for this particular cause?
Before you answer, can you acknowledge all the guests that have come? Acknowledge them.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I am Farooq here, organizing this program. So I'd like to thank all of the guests, but I'll take names. Uh, First of all, I would like to thank Shakil Hassan Kaisar Saab, advocate. He has been really helpful and always kind to us. With him, we have Sayyid Nasir Ahmad Gilani Saab. He is chief of ex Waters. Then we have one Islamic scholar with us, Khalid Mahmood Abbasi Saab. I would like to thank you for being here. Then our oldest and one of the key allies, Miss Amna Masood Janjua Sahiba, chairperson of Defense of Human Rights. Thank you for being here. Then we have a couple of retired brigadiers with us. Brigadier Shazab Majid Saab, thank you for being here. And Brigadier Akib Nazir Chaudhry Saab. We really appreciate the presence of all our esteemed guests. And with our, you can say, partner or host organizations, Altaf Shakur Saab, who is the chairman of Pasban Democratic Party and one of the leading ambassadors of Aafia cause, Senator Mushtaq Ahmad Khan Saab. I appreciate all of you being here. Yeah, I've mentioned. Okay, then I would like to also thank Muaz Shah Saab, advocate. He helped me in organizing this program and inviting many guests. Sardar Mazhar Saab from Muslim Talba Mahaz and former head of Muslim Students Organization. Bilal Rabbani, current president of Muslim Talba Mahaz. I hope I'm not missing anyone.
Is there someone we've missed?
Head of Taqwiyat Foundation.
Khalil Ahmed
Okay,
Asi,
head of
and
Taqwiyat Foundation, Suhaib, advocate Suhaib. Thank you.
anyone else?
I hope.
Huh?
Okay. You take it.
Yes. But we really acknowledge your presence. Thank you so much.
Dr. Khalid Sulheri from our esteemed guest list.
Shankiani.
Ms. Afsha Kiani from Human Rights Council. Thank you everyone for being here.
I will individually go to you guys also. So even if we miss someone right now, please don't mind. We'll inshallah get back to you. Back to the question we posed to Mr. Shahid Abbasi sir.
Thank you very much. It's a privilege to be here. I'm grateful to Senator Mushtaq, and I'm thankful to Clive Smith for being here and piecing this story together. And I think that's very critical. I'm not a lawyer, but I've been through a lot of court cases and things like that. So I realize that there's a vast difference between what is a fact and what is a legally admissible fact. The one thing I think Clive has done a great job in initiating a new way of looking at this case and hopefully, inshallah, resolving it. One thing that always agitated me is why Dr. Aafia Siddiqui? The whole thing doesn't make any rational sense. Why would a country like the US, which was at war, we admit that, but why Dr. Aafia Siddiqui? And I think that's a question that will come up when you pursue this case further. The other thing, which is a question, I was responsible for pursuing her case for 10 months when I held the position of that responsibility. And there's a question that we kind of never answered, which was not answered, is she was, in my knowledge, never classified as an enemy combatant. So why not? When they had so many people classified as enemy combatants, why not Dr. Aafia Siddiqui? And her whole case, which Clive has put before you, really makes no sense. There's nothing in that whole story that one could accept as fact. We've, without disclosing things that I have taken oath not to disclose, we've had opportunities before I was there, while I was there, I think after I was there, of um, um, a compromise solution. Um, the ask was perhaps too high. Frankly, that was the considered opinion of the people around whenever this was discussed. The ask was just too high. So it's a sad thing to say, but that's the reality. Um, have we failed Afia Siddiqui? I would think so. Yes, we as a country, as a people, have failed Afia Siddiqui, and we need to do more about it. And I think what you said in your first slide is that we can all make a difference. So you're here to make a difference. Whatever we can do, we all of us should chip in, and whatever role we can play. I think it's important that she is provided justice. I also fail to understand why the American justice system failed to this extent. Um, the U.S. prides itself on a justice system that perhaps delivers us a sense of a level of justice based on the basic principle of your guilty, you're innocent until proven guilty. That is not the case here. I think even with the deficiencies in the system we have here, with all the decisions that we take here in the courts, this perhaps will stand out even as a large failure, even by our low standards. So I think she's a Pakistani national for many years. I'm glad somebody's put this out here. For many years, the public opinion was, to a large extent, that she was also a U.S. citizen, which is not true. Yes, yeah, yeah. Within the public, yeah.
Public said home ki beti, which means Pakistan ki beti. It was the government that kept coming up with this excuse.
I always knew that she was a Pakistani national, but we were led to believe, many people, that she's also a U.S. national. She was a dual national. But that doesn't change the facts of the case, in my opinion. She was not convicted in the U.S. of a crime in the U.S. Um, and so the whole story just doesn't add up. So I think, is it a legal case? The legality is always, they are open to review. Was due process followed? It's very clear it wasn't. And is there a political solution? It's been on the table from day one. It probably is there today. I'm not sure about this government, but I think the Pakistan governments perhaps need to follow it up more diligently, and perhaps reach a consensus amongst its own workings whether it can accept the compromise solutions that are offered. So that's I think the biggest hope of getting Aafia Siddiqui released is through a government to government interaction, which perhaps would be acceptable to both sides.
So I have a follow-up question with regards to the compromise solution you mentioned. In terms of the negotiating power, I think the Pakistani side's power would decrease with time. It's not going to age better. We're not ever going to get a better version of this deal. Am I incorrect or speaking out of turn in this sense? Like, what have subsequent Pakistani governments or previous governments been waiting for? How can we expect to have an improved relationship with the Americans and then subsequently have a better deal, because our relationship has been souring as the years have passed on in the war on terror, and I think they're at a very low point since they've been since the 60s. So how do we expect to ever get a better deal with a less compromising negotiation on our end? I mean, the deal is going to get worse. Afia is going to get older. Her health will deteriorate, and so on and so forth. What is the compromise negotiation point which the Pakistani government can achieve or could have achieved 20 years ago or 10 years ago? How is it going to get better with time?
No, as I said initially, the ask was something that um, we could not achieve a consensus on. And if I put the ask before this table, you go around the table, you will not reach a consensus. Yes, with time, whatever leverage we have, dilutes. I think if it in the initial days, if it had been pursued more diligently, we probably would have reached a solution. But again, I always come back to the basic question: why Aafia Siddiqui? What is happening there? I've asked the question of myself many times, but we don't see why that person? Why did this happen? Yeah.
That's a great question, and I talked far too long before anyhow, but I'm just going to talk a bit more because I got the answer. I know exactly why, because not only have I talked to ISI agents, I've talked to American Secret Service agents, and they've told me. And this is what they thought, and they're just idiots. And I've seen this over the years. When I was in New Orleans in 2002, there was a guy there who was a Secret Service agent who has told me that what they thought of Aafia was this. And just listen to this. And this is all part of an affidavit that's going to be in court soon. They thought that Aafia Siddiqui was she was a scientist, a nuclear scientist who had a PhD in physics from MIT. Is that right? No, it's rubbish. They thought that because of that, she could build a nuclear bomb because she was such a great scientist. They thought that she could get into America because they thought she had a green card. She didn't. And they thought, this is the great one, I love this one, they thought that she was going to be smuggled into the US with a nuclear bomb by Al-Qaeda working in league with the Colombian drug cartels. That's what they thought. And they also thought this stuff about blood diamonds in Africa that their own FBI had disproved. And I cannot tell you how often I've had to deal with this. I had another client who was meant to have a nuclear bomb. And he had told the Americans that the way you build a nuclear bomb is you put uranium in a bucket and you swing it around your head for 45 minutes. That divides uranium-235 from uranium-239. Bob's your uncle. You'd like that, wouldn't you, in the military, that you could get your nuclear weapons that easily? That's what they thought. This is just idiocy. And when I began this stuff 20 years ago, I didn't think they were that stupid, but I'm afraid they are.
So yeah, so basically it's that thing. I think you need to continue both the legal sides and the political sides. You have to work on that. There's always opportunities in bilateral relationships, but there are always transactional opportunities.
So we're thankful for your candor. I mean, it is rare to find a veteran politician who would talk so candidly about the incompetence that the Pakistani state has had in the past 20, 30 years. I don't know if I agree entirely with Clive's analysis of the situation, but I do agree in principle, at least, that more often than not, what politicians are given in terms of intelligence from the agencies is meant to be believed at face value, and that creates a sort of hysteria where maybe, like you said, we didn't push back on the American state and pursue it at that time where we had more leveraging power. But thank you, sir, for your candor. And I hope that subsequent governments will be able to negotiate better on our behalf. However, I don't see what the leveraging power would be in the near future, except maybe Dr. Shahid Afridi, which again is a matter of national security. And it remains to be seen whether or not the Pakistani state would be able to make that exchange. Yes, sir.
He had consular access
Yes,
to Dr. Aafia Siddiqui for years. Is that still there, or it's being denied now?
No, I have total access to her. It's fine. I'm a lawyer.
No, the diplomatic consular.
Oh yeah, your diplomatic people have access to her. They haven't achieved a whole lot.
No, I'm saying most people believed it, that she was a US national. For a while, I also thought she had both nationalities because we are allowed to keep both nationalities. But apparently that is not the case.
I have a lot of research being in the United States as well, sir.
Sir, can I please ask you to introduce yourself for everybody's consumption before you ask your question?
Yes, I am Dr. Khalid Solehri. I'm a chairman, International Human Rights Observer, which are member United Nations organization, having ECOSOC status. And I have a lot of research, even living in the United States and other parts of the USA on this case particularly. And Mr. Smith, of course, you are sharing a great historical background, each and everything. You're one of the biggest witnesses of this case, and we really appreciate. But my concern is that I would like to ask a question to Honorable Ex-Prime Minister of Pakistan, that we have been witnessing, we have been noting that government of Pakistan have been giving remarks that Aafia can be a security risk if she's returned to the Pakistan. So in your tenure, sir, in your period, have you have such kind of background of your any official? Some.
I mean, myself a security risk in the country. So.
Yeah, yes, you are suffering also. You are suffering also, but
no,
I'm
now before. I mean, so security risk in Pakistan is a is a momentary thing. It's a
personal suffering
situation.
cannot be compared with the suffering of the Aafia Siddiqui. Aafia Siddiqui is one of that suffering on the page of the world. Their whole world is ashamed on the violation of human rights. What's the violation of the human rights in the history of the United States and their department as well? So we can understand.
The issue is she's a Pakistani national. And there is a provision where you can serve your remaining sentence in your home country. I think that's one avenue we should pursue. And if I'm not, it's a long time back, Ayub Afridi was given this privilege, that he was serving a sentence, but I think he had a prior commitment on that part, where he was served a part of a sentence in the US and then came to Karachi jail to serve out the rest of the sentence. So I think that's one avenue that we probably need to pursue.
Thank you.
And back to Soleri Saab also. So firstly, thank you for being here. I had a question for you in my own notes as well, with respect to your service and your work in human rights advocacy and SDGs. So a main component of the Sustainable Development Goals and the vision for 2030 is the fact that you want to uphold the rule of law across the globe, and you've been very vocal on these matters, and with respect to rights of Pakistanis and in many other communities, especially on the United Nations front. What can you, in the capacity as the international human rights observer, or in generally the scope of the work that you do, what concrete steps can you take and suggest for us all to take in that direction?
Thank you very much. In fact, when we are a member of the United Nations, when we have the ECOSOC special status of the United Nations, so my organization have ECOSOC special status. When we are in the United Nations compound, we have the privilege and we have the opportunities to highlight such high-level cases of the human rights, and we have been. That is the platform you're talking about, that we have been working on this particular human rights violation issue, especially case of Miss Aafia Siddiqui. That's a terrible, and we have realized the word. We have realized the word that until we have not the resolution and solution of such kind of human rights violations by law and other measures, we cannot proceed our SDGs and other development agendas in the world. So the peoples, the experts in each and every country cannot see such kind of cases on that level. In fact, they cannot realize that how such cases can be obstacle in the way of the sustainable development in the world. I have observed many cases that cannot be highlighted many times, but I think so Aafia Siddiqui case is the top story of the world. And the USA has failed to tackle and handle this biggest human rights violation case in the history of the human man. So as concerned other agenda, because today's topic of Aafia Siddiqui, at a time I am very sad, to be very honest, and I know Mr. Smith from United States as well. He have been working for decades on this particular issue. But right. Mr. Smith, this is very alarming. At the same time, it's very alarming. In spite of all your struggle, all your preaches, all your lectures, I know why the Islamic world, even the Christian world and other words are not taking it seriously even for a minute.
Sir, I'm glad you mentioned Islamic well. Thank you for that comment.
So,
And
thank
it'll
you.
help me
Thank you.
transition on to the next
yeah.
speaker.
So
which
thank you
is
very
Mr.
much. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Mr. Khalid Mahmood Abbasi, thank you, sir, for being here. He's from the organization Shabanul Muslimin, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. And he's an Islamic scholar. So obviously, we've been talking a lot about the legality of the entire matter. So just on the Dini Fariza aspect of things, we're in the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, or I can't exactly remember the ayat, but जी एग्जैक्ट वो आयत तो कुरान की शायद हम या सूरा ना मेंशन कर सकें, लेकिन उसका तर्जुमा कुछ यूं ही है कि वो लोग अल्लाह ताला की तरफ देख के पुकारते हैं, मदद की फरियाद करते हैं, तो तुम्हें क्या हो गया एक मुसलमानों के, तुम उनकी मदद को नहीं जाते. आप बेहतर गाइड कर सकते हैं कि ये किस किस सूरत की आयत है और उसका क्या कॉन्टेक्स्ट है. बट मिस आफिया के हवाले से क्या हमारी जिम्मेदारियां बनती हैं एज अ स्टेट, स्पेशली एज एन इस्लामिक स्टेट?
जी बहुत शुक्रिया. जो बात जिस आयत का जिक्र किया गया है सूरह निसा की आयत है, और मक्के में जब मुसलमान मजलूम थे और इसी तरह की अजियतों से दो चार थे जिसका जिक्र अभी हम कर रहे थे, तो उस वक्त जो मुसलमान मदीने में थे उन्हें अपील किया गया था कि आप लोग क्यों चुप करके बैठे हो और इन मजलूमों की मदद के लिए उठ खड़े क्यों नहीं होते. मैं बहुत अच्छे टाइम पर मुझे मौका मिला है, मुझसे पहले बहुत ही अच्छी जगह पे बात पहुंच गई हुई है, मैं वहीं से आगे लेके चलना चाहता हूँ. मेरे ख्याल में आफिया सिद्दीकी हम सब के लिए एक टेस्ट केस है, और ये टेस्ट केस है 21st सेंचुरी को समझने का. कहने को हम मॉडर्न एज में दाखिल हुए हैं, लेकिन हकीकत में हम किसी गैर कानूनी जो एज की सोसाइटी थी उसमें जा घुसे हैं. हमने इस सेंचुरी में अपने मुल्क में परवेज मुशर्रफ देखे हैं, मैं कह रहा हूँ, आप जरा नोट कीजिएगा, मैं देखा है नहीं कह रहा हूँ, परवेज मुशर्रफ देखे हैं, और अमेरिका में हमने बुश देखे हैं, और अब हम ट्रम्प देख रहे हैं, और बाकी दुनिया में हम नेतन्याहू और मोदी देख रहे हैं. इनमें से आप सोचें किसी एक को भी हुकूक इंसानी का, कानून का, लॉ का, इंटरनेशनल लॉज का कोई किसी को पात हो, ख्याल हो. हमने मायदा किया है, उठा के मुंह पे दिया है, हमारा मायदा था ये पानी की तकसीम का, हम मानते एक तरफा तौर पे खत्म करते हैं. तो पूरी दुनिया असल में एक आफिया के केस को उठा के पूरी दुनिया को, आफिया भी एक इंसान है और हमारे बहुत अजीज हैं, कोई शक नहीं है, क्योंकि उनका सिलात हमें मालूम है तो हमें हमदर्दी है. आप सोचें गजा में क्या हो रहा है, आप देखें कश्मीर में क्या हो रहा है, देख हिंदुस्तान गवर्नमेंट रसूख के साथ मुसलमान क्या किया जा रहा है. ये सदी है जिसमें हम जी रहे हैं, और इसकी बुनियाद बदकिस्मती से, चूंकि इस दुनिया का माई बाप अमेरिका है, मानना पड़ेगा, सबसे सुपर पावर अमेरिका है, और इस दुनिया की बुनियाद उसने रखी है. कहते हैं एक मकौला है, कहीं जो बड़ा होता है छोटे उसी की पैरवी करते हैं. तो अगर लोग करेंगे और ट्रंप लोग ऐसा करेंगे तो परवेज मुशर्रफ लोग क्यों नहीं करेंगे. ये है असल में जिस दौर में हम इस वक्त जी रहे हैं, वो तमाम लोग. अच्छा, मसला ये भी है, हम जो है ना ये कोशिशें कर रहे हैं, हम रूल ऑफ द लॉ की बात कर रहे हैं, हुकूक इंसानी की बात कर रहे हैं. अमेरिका में भी, पूरे वेस्ट में भी ये तमाम लिबरलिज्म, सेकुलरिज्म खतरे में है, और वहाँ पे भी वाइट सुप्रीमेसी की तहरीक वैसी ही चल रही है जैसे यहाँ हमारे इंडिया में हिंदुत्व की तहरीक है. तो हर तरफ जो है ना एक फाशिज्म का दौर है, जिसकी बुनियाद असल में आफिया सिद्दीकी को इस तरह से किडनैप करके रखी गई. हम सबको मालूम है किडनैप करने वाले हमारे लोग थे, बदले में वही था जो अभी $1 मिलियन बात आई थी कि आपको अगर इतने पैसे मिले तो क्या करेंगे, तो बस वही किया. तो जिन्होंने कर लिया अब उनकी इज्जत का सवाल बन गया. अगर वो रिहा होके आती हैं तो सबका भांडा फूटता है, और हम सबको मालूम है कि मंजा किया पहना उन्हीं ने. वो बेशक जो है ना बीच में 20 साल गुजर गए हूँ, लेकिन अपने कबीले की पग का ख्याल तो रखना पड़ता है, लिहाजा सब उनकी पग का ख्याल रख रहे हैं. एक्चुअली बुनियादी बात ये है. रह गई बात जो है ना इसकी, वो जो डॉक्टर शकील आफरीदी है, मेरे ख्याल में वो भी एक कवर स्टोरी है, असल बंदा कोई और है जिसने वो सारा काम किया था. तो अगर वो दे के बात बनती हो, मुझे नहीं पता बनेगी या नहीं बनेगी, तो मैं तो इस बात के हक में हूं कि बना लेनी चाहिए.
Thank you very much, sir. There's a follow-up comment. We had him on our agenda at the very end because of course he's been driving this initiative along with Dr. Fauzia throughout. So we wanted कि वो सारी audience को इकट्ठा address करें towards the very end. But just on some things that have been said so far, I would like to request Senator Mushtaq Saab to please say a few words.
बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम. बहुत शुक्रिया. शाहिद आकान अब्बासी साहब चूँकि जाएंगे फिर, तो मैं चाहता हूँ कि उनकी मौजूदगी में चंद बातें कर लूँ. सबसे पहले तो मैं सबका शुक्रिया अदा करता हूँ कि आप लोग यहाँ पे डॉक्टर फौजिया की दावत पे तशरीफ़ लाए हैं, और एक ही नेक मकसद है कि 22 साल बाद ही सही कौम की बेटी को पाकिस्तान लाया जाए. तो इस मजलिस का जो मेन मकसद है मेरे ख्याल में वो यही है कि माजी में जो कुछ हुआ है उसका तस्करा तो केस को समझने के लिए, उसका तस्करा तो उससे सबक हासिल करने के लिए, उसका तस्करा तो अपनी गलतियों की इस्लाह के लिए ज़रूरी है, न कि अपने आप को इस अंदाज से मलामत कर दी जाए कि उसके नतीजे में एक जिसको कहते हैं ना कौमी तौहीन की वो पहलू निकले. वो नहीं, वो गलतियों की इस्लाह, मामलात को दुरुस्त करने, और 22 साल बाद ही सही लेकिन कौम की बेटी को पाकिस्तान लाया जाए. तो इस मजलिस का जिसमें मुख्तलिफुल ख्याल लोग हैं, बहुत सी चीज़ों पर, बहुत सी उमूर पर लोग एक दूसरे के साथ इख्तिलाफ करेंगे, और ये एक फितरी बात है और एक हुस्न है डेमोक्रेसी का. लेकिन मकसद इसका एक है. मैं 2-3 चीज़ों के बारे में कुछ वजाहत कर लूँ. मैं खुद डॉक्टर फौजिया के साथ कोई 3 साल पहले अमेरिका गया. 20 साल बाद मुझे अमेरिका का वीज़ा मिला, वो भी सेनेट ऑफ पाकिस्तान के मेंबर होने के नाते, और वहाँ पे मैंने मुलाकात की डॉक्टर फौजिया से FMC कॉरल्सविल में, उसको डॉक्टर आफिया से, जिसको जहन्नम का गड़ा कहा जाता है. ये बात आई 550 केसेस अमेरिका में सेक्सुअल एब्यूज के जेलों के अंदर इन्वेस्टिगेट हो रहे हैं, जिसमें से 345 सिर्फ इस जेल में. आप अंदाजा कर लें, वो एक बहुत ही खौफनाक जेल है. बहरहाल मैं क्लाइव के साथ कैसे मुतारिफ हुआ कि मैं ग्वांटानामो के अंदर जो पाकिस्तानी थे, सेनेट ऑफ पाकिस्तान में उनके लिए आवाज उठाता था. उस वक्त 4 पाकिस्तानी थे. एक कराची का माजिद था, माजिद, नाउ ही इज इन साउथ अमेरिका, माजिद खान. 2 रब्बानी बिरादरान थे और एक सैफुल्लाह पिराचा थे. जब मैंने ये केस उठाया तो हुकूमत पाकिस्तान ने इनकार कर दिया कि कोई पाकिस्तानी इस नाम के नहीं है. लेकिन बहरहाल जिस तरह होता है, एक दलील से, पूरे तफसीलात से उन्होंने आखिर में एक्सेप्ट कर लिया. 2-2.5 साल के बाद हम इस काबिल हुए कि उन तीनों को पाकिस्तान ला सके, और उसमें बहुत बड़ी कंट्रीब्यूशन थी क्लाइव स्मिथ की. अच्छा, वो जो साबिक वज़ीर आज़म मोहतरम शाहिद आकान अब्बासी साहब ने सवाल उठाया है कि आफिया ही क्यों, तो मैं रब्बानी बिरादरान से ये पूछता था कि आप क्यों गए ग्वांटानामो. मैं क्यों नहीं गया, कोई और क्यों नहीं गया, आप क्यों गए, और आपका जुर्म क्या था, आपने 21 साल गुजारे. तो वो बड़ी बेबसी के हंसी हंसते थे, कहते हमें भी पता नहीं है. हुआ ये, वो जो मेरे सेनेट ऑफ पाकिस्तान में पेश किया कि अमेरिका को एक टेररिस्ट चाहिए था, नोटोरियस टेररिस्ट हसन गुल, और उन्होंने पाकिस्तान से दरख्वास्त की कि हमें ये हसन गुल पकड़ के दे दें. इन्होंने एक रब्बानी बिरादरान को, अहमद रब्बानी, गुलाम रब्बानी की, एक को एक शेफ था और दूसरा ड्राइवर था, उसको पकड़ के हवाले कर दिया. वो उनको बागराम ले गए, 3 साल बागराम में रखा. 3 साल जब बागराम में रखा तो खुद जो ये US सेनेट को जो डॉक्यूमेंट्स पेश हुए हैं वो मैंने पाकिस्तानी सेनेट में पेश किए. आफ्टर 3 ईयर उन्होंने रियल हसन गुल को पकड़ के मार दिया. अब इनका क्या करें, तो उनको बागराम से उठा के ले गए हैं वहां पे ग्वांटानामो पे, और फिर बेचारे 21 साल जो हैं वो वहां पे रहे. तो वो जंग ऐसी थी कि उसमें दोनों तरफ जो लोग काम करते थे, बाज़ औक़ात उनको ट्रॉफीज चाहिए, और उसमें बहुत से बेगुनाह जो हैं वो आ गए हैं, बहुत से बेगुनाह आ गए हैं. मसलन आफिया के बारे में ये कि वो अमेरिकन नेशनल है, बिल्कुल नहीं है. ये कि वो न्यूक्लियर साइंटिस्ट है, वो एजुकेशनिस्ट है. یہ کہ وہ القاعدہ کی ماتحری ہے, یہ کہ وہ ٹیرر موم ہے, یہ کہ وہ ساؤتھ افریقہ ڈائمنڈ کی اسمگلنگ کے ذریعے سے فائنینسنگ کرتی تھی. ان کی کوئی ٹریول ہسٹری ہی نہیں ہے ساؤتھ افریقہ, کوئی ایسی چیز ان کے کیس میں یہ ساری چیزیں نہیں ہیں. ان کے کیس میں وہی ہے جو کلائیو اسمتھ نے آپ کو بتا دیے, امریکن سولجرز کے اوپر وہ حملہ کرنا. تو وہ جو ہیں وہ ایک وہ ہو گیا. اب جس تکلیف میں ہمیں اس سے نکالنا ہے اس کے لیے کوشش, اب راستہ کیا ہے؟ میرے خیال میں ہمیں اسی کے اوپر فوکس کرنا چاہیے کہ وہ راستہ کیا ہے کہ جس کے ذریعے سے ہم قوم کی اس بیٹی کو جو بے گناہ ہے لائیں پاکستان. اس میں 2-3 راستے جو بتا دیے. کلیمنسی, اب کلیمنسی کا آپ دیکھ لیں, 8,000 سے زائد معافیاں اس دفعہ ریکارڈ ہے امریکی تاریخ کی جو بائیڈن نے دی. ڈاکٹر عافیہ کے لیے دنیا بھر سے 16 لاکھ لوگوں نے درخواستیں دی. یہ ایک ریکارڈ ہے امریکی تاریخ میں. دنیا بھر سے 16 لاکھ لوگوں نے آن لائن ریکویسٹ کی کہ بھائی ڈاکٹر عافیہ کو آپ معافی دے دیں اور اس کو رہا کر لیں. اس کے اوپر سیریس ایفرٹس نہیں ہوا ہے. ہم تو یہ ساری چیزیں دیکھ رہے ہیں, جس طرح عدالت نے حکم دیا کہ وفد جانا چاہیے پارلیمنٹیرینز کا, حکومت کا, وہ وفد کیسے گیا, وہ ساری چیزیں ہماری پیش نظر سامنے تھی. تو ایک تو یہ. دوسرا, کمپیشنیٹ گراؤنڈ پر ریلیف اینڈ ریلیز, اس کے لیے جو ایفرٹس ہونی چاہیے ڈپلومیٹک لیول پر, اسٹیٹ لیول پر, وہ نظر نہیں آ رہی ہمیں. اسی طرح کیس کی ریویو کا جس طرح بات آئی کہ یہ تو یہاں سے اغوا ہو گئی ہے, بچوں کے ساتھ ہی اغوا ہو گئی, اس کے نتیجے میں پورا کیس ہی چینج ہو جاتا ہے. اور جو چوتھی چیز جو ہے سویپ ہے. اچھا, اس پہ آ کے فوراً بات شکیل افریدی پہ آتی. قطعاً شکیل افریدی کی ضرورت نہیں ہے. دیکھیں, جب سے عافیہ گئی ہے امریکہ, اس کے بعد کئی مواقع آئے کہ پاکستان اس لیوریج کو استعمال کر کے عافیہ کو لا سکتا تھا. مثلا ریمنڈ ڈیوس کا ایشو تھا, اس سے پہلے باقی 2 امریکنز کا ایشو تھا. سب سے بڑا ایشو جو میں خود ڈیفنس کمیٹی کا ممبر رہا ہوں 6 سال, شاہد بھائی صاحب زیادہ بہتر جانتے ہیں, 6 سال میں ڈیفنس کمیٹی کا ممبر رہا ہوں. ان کیمرہ سیشن میں ساری چیزیں آتی تھیں. اسی طرح میں نیشنل سیکیورٹی جو پارلیمنٹری کمیٹی یا نیشنل سیکیورٹی بہت ہائی پاور کمیٹی ہے دونوں ایوانوں کی مشترکہ طور پہ, اس کا ممبر رہا ہوں. جو دوحہ پیس ڈیل ہوا اس میں بہت بڑی ضرورت تھی ان کی پاکستان, اور پاکستان ہی کے ذریعے سے ان کو افغانستان سے نکلنے میں مدد ملی. اس وقت ہم اس چیز کو جو ہیں وہ کر سکتے تھے. ایون آپ یہ دیکھ لیں, ابھی ریسنٹلی شریف اللہ کا جو کیس ہوا ہے, آپ نے افغانستان سے اٹھا کے اس کو دے دیا اور بہت زیادہ خوش ہوئے اس کے اوپر ٹرمپ جو ہے. میرا جو ایشو ہے جو میں بتا دینا چاہتا ہوں وہ یہ ہے کہ شکیل افریدی قطعاً ضروری نہیں ہے. ہم کہتے ہیں سویپ آف انٹرسٹ, سویپ کوئی اور ایسی چیز, لیکن آپ پرائرٹی رکھ لیں کہ ہم نے قوم کی اس بیٹی کو لانا ہے. جہاں تک شکیل افریدی کا تعلق ہے, مجھے تو یہ ڈر ہے کہ کسی دن ہم صبح اٹھیں گے تو ہمیں پتہ چلے گا کہ شکیل افریدی امریکہ چلا گیا ہے, اس لیے کہ کسی پاکستانی کورٹ نے ان کو سزا نہیں دی ہے. کسی بھی پاکستانی کورٹ نے ان کو, کسی پاکستانی کورٹ سے سزا یافتہ مجرم نہیں ہے. تو جو ہماری پوزیشن ہے اور جس طرح پریشر آتا ہے, جس نے کہیں ایسا نہ ہو کہ عافیہ بھی وہیں رہے اور یہ بھی نہ ہو, لیکن وہ ضروری نہیں ہے. ہمیں کسی فرد سے, ہمیں عافیہ سے غرض ہے کہ عافیہ آئے, کیسے آئے. اور سب سے کم چیز جو شاہد بھائی صاحب نے کہا کہ جو پریزنرز کا وہ ہے, آپ لے آئیں اور اپنی باقی عمر وہ یہاں پاکستان میں, یہ کم سے کم چیز ہے جو پاکستانی حکومت کو اس کے لیے ایفرٹس کرنی چاہیے. اور یہ یہاں یہ بات بھی آئی, میں اس کی بھی وضاحت کروں. یہ میں ڈاکٹر فوزیہ سے معذرت کے ساتھ, اگر یہ اختلاف کریں تو میں پیشکین سے معذرت چاہتا ہوں. دیکھیں, اگر کسی کو یہ فکر ہے کہ یہ پالیٹکس میں آئے گی, میں تو یہ آفر کرتا ہوں اپنی طرف سے, نہیں آئے گی. میڈیا میں آئے گی, نہیں آئے گی. عافیہ یہ عدالت میں جائے گی, نہیں جائے گی. میں نے تو یہ تک آفر کیا کہ آپ اسے قطر, ترکی یا ملیشیا کہیں پہ ہاؤس اریسٹ کرے, لیکن اس جیل سے نکالے تاکہ بچے ان کے ساتھ جا کے ملیں. اس لیے کہ جو بندہ وہاں گیا ہے اس نے عافیہ کو دیکھا ہے, اور عافیہ کے ساتھ جو کچھ ہو رہا ہے اس کو دیکھا ہے. اس کے بعد کم از کم وہ ایک انسان کے ناطے وہ یہ کہے گا کہ یار ہر وہ ایفرٹس کرنی چاہیے جو اس مجبور اور مظلوم خاتون کو وہاں سے لایا جا سکے. تو میں سمجھتا ہوں ہماری ایفرٹس جو ہیں, ہم مختلف طبقات سے تعلق رکھتے ہیں, یہی ہے कि हम अपने माजी की गलतियों की इस्लाह करें, अपने माजी की गलतियों से सीखें, अपने घर को दुरुस्त करें, अपने जो लोग हैं, ख्वाह वो बलूचिस्तान में, खैबर पुख्तनख्वा में या इस तरह के लोग हैं, उनके जख्मों पर मरहम रखें, उनके जख्मों पर नमक न छिड़कें, उनके जख्मों पर मरहम रखें, अपने कौम को इकट्ठा करें, अपने मुल्क को इकट्ठा करें, और खुद आफिया आएगी तो ये कौमी फखर, कौमी यकजहती और कौमी अजमत का एक नमूना बनेगी। यकीन करें, उसके नतीजे में इतना बूस्ट होगा ये कौम। तो ये मेरी दरखास्त ये है कि इसको इस तनाजुर के अंदर देखा जाए कि हम अपने एफर्ट्स पूल कर लें किसी तरीके से आफिया को लाने के लिए, और उसमें अदालतों के जरिए से, पार्लियामेंट के जरिए से, हुकूमत के जरिए से, एस्टेब्लिशमेंट के जरिए से, मीडिया के जरिए से, पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज के जरिए जितनी भी कोशिश हो सकती है वो कोशिश करनी चाहिए। बहुत शुक्रिया।
Mr. Sir, before you say, just allow some volunteer to hand over a mic to you. Thank you. And meanwhile, I'd like to welcome Mr. Sher Afzal Marwat. He has joined us also. Thank you, sir, for making your time. Sir, if you have the mic, please introduce yourself and you can ask a question. Right. Sir, we have everyone. We have Brigadier Shazib Majid with us. Sir, thank you for making your time. You've been a senior officer in the Pakistan Army, and you've served as Director General for the International Law and Arbitration Center of Pakistan Army. So, given your experience with respect to international law, and before you obviously comment and ask your questions and take clarity from the panels here, जिस तरह से मुश्ताक साहब ने कहा, हम सारे यहाँ ब्रेनस्टॉर्म करने के लिए आए हैं. So given your expertise, can we have some understanding of if there's anything with respect to military law or international law to rectify the mistake that our ancestors have made?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And my question, in fact, I would just like to ask a question. I requested that I should rather be given a chance to ask a question, because there are two parts of it. One, partially you have just mentioned that we should try to get her to, we can try to get her to some other country or something. My question was basically that although we are trying to bring her back to Pakistan, but if that is not possible, if that is not going through for last couple of years, so have we tried to pursue another country that they should take on that case, that we transfer her to that particular country, and with particular restrictions, not to come on the media, whatsoever is the case, to ensure that all the concerns of all the sides are addressed. She is not talking about about what has happened there. She has not talked about what previously happened. So something of that kind. One. Second part is that if I look at that petition, which was there in the High Court also here, I was a little surprised that I understand that over the years there must have been so many different ways to address this, to challenge US, to challenge things. So maybe this is the last stage where you have reached, in which I found it a little difficult to absorb that once in a petition, the CIA, the intelligence agencies of US are blamed, the intelligence agencies of Pakistan are blamed. So once you blame both the sides, how do you want a solution? How would a solution come out of it? Once you have blamed both the sides and you are asking for a mercy from one side, and you are asking one side to plead for a mercy from the state side, so how would that happen? I was a little confused about that.
I just want to make a little comment and a question for you, Brigadier Saab. With due respect, I was just thinking that when we talk about going to another country, right? Sometimes, God forbid, after 22 years, I am beginning to feel like maybe if I had asylum anywhere and every country would welcome me, Aafia would be better off and I would be better off. But that's a shameful statement to even say or make, and it really hurts me deeply. And for us, after so many years, she's a citizen of Pakistan, and the Federation of Pakistan, regardless of the merits or the demerits, don't you think that it's kind of shameful if we get her to go somewhere else on for Pakistan? And don't you think that just imagine how what the world sees us as daughter sellers? Is that what we want our legacy to continue? Is that what we want our children to grow up as?
Okay. Now let me just put it in another way. That this question I asked because it was mentioned at the end that this can be one of the things that we can do that. So that question came to my mind, that whether you have tried it or not. If I am at your place and I am a sister, my first thing would be to get her out in any way. It is not that I am first looking for the pride of the nation and things. So my effort
Yes.
as a sister would be to get her out.
Yes, and trust me.
Maybe to an island which is in the middle of nowhere, but my priority. So that is why I say that what is our priority? That is it that we are going to go for it for a couple of more years with this, or have we thought about it, or we have never thought about it, or this is not the agenda? So this is what I wanted to know. Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you, Brigadier, and it's a good question. And one of the people that the senator mentioned, Majid Khan, Pakistani, is now on the beach in Belize. So I've got no problem getting someone to another country. I'm with you. I want to get her out of there. And I don't really care where it is, as long as we have good healthcare for her, which is what she needs. And there are other things, in terms of assurances for people. We always have to look at what's going through the minds of the people involved. And every person I got out of Guantanamo, we did security arrangements as we got them out. The legal term for most of them was total bullshit, right? I mean, they were totally unnecessary, because these were guys who were just totally happy to come back to where they were. But just to make it politically easier. On Britain, for example, we agreed to, you wouldn't travel for whatever. And I'll agree with anyone right now, Aafia is not going in the media. And that's an easy thing for us to agree with, because she's so traumatized. I wouldn't make her do that. Now, the other thing is this. This is, how it is. And I sometimes think of myself as a little Napoleon. And it's a game of chess. Like the military is a game of chess, right? And we began, I've only been involved in this for a little over 2 years. And I wish to goodness I'd done the trial. She wouldn't be there today. I say that without any modesty at all. We would have got her off on this, because it was true. It should have been tried as a political case. But now it's a different thing. And in the last 2 years, we've tried to begin by being the nice guys. You always want to try and be the nice guys. And I talked to your government and I said, look, I tell you what I got on you guys. And what we did with the clemency petition, we kept that all under wraps. There's a lot of bad stuff in there for some of your, the ISI and the CIA. There's going to be a lot more now, because I've found a lot more out. So we said, look, if you can get a home, we're not going to publish all this stuff. And I agree with you. If you can do it with honey rather than vinegar, much better idea. But then in the end, it becomes down to a matter of power. And I'm really lucky. I've got an American bar license. The American Constitution is an amazingly powerful document. And it's not because I'm so clever. I can just beat up on governments. It's really rather fun. And if they don't do what's right by this poor little person in an awful cell somewhere, then we're going to go after them. It's just that simple. And so we've warned them. And the way this will work out, I mean, I'd love for it to be resolved the easy way. And if you wouldn't mind just chatting with some of your old colleagues, I'd love that. If not, I'm going to expose it, because that's what we got to do. And I'm going to expose it first in front of the judge in New York, because really the deal is, I'm not the CIA's favorite person, but I've got a security clearance. I see their secret stuff. I can't talk about it. I obey the same rules as you do, I'm sure. But I know about it, right? And I already know about stuff that I can't tell Fawzia. And I know some bad stuff for the United States and Pakistan. And my first thing is to go to the judge in New York and say, why don't we issue a subpoena to the CIA? And I think he might do that. And if he does, you know what's going to happen, right? They're going to surrender, because that's the way they always do. And every person we got out of Guantanamo, we basically threatened them and the CIA with exposure. And if they didn't do what we asked, we exposed them. So that's the way it works. And it really isn't a matter of, I mean, I like to make friends. I really like to be friends with everyone. But if we can't make friends, we just have to beat them up. That's all there is.
Thank you so much. We have a distinguished legal professional, Mr. Maz Shah, with us here. Sir, I'd like to ask you a question with respect to your affiliation of the OIC. So Dr. Aafia's matter is not uncommon. I mean, obviously for Dr. Fawzia, this is the one in a million story, and it's horrific and it's very personal. But this has happened, I think, across borders in many, many countries, especially in the Muslim states all across the globe, by the same perpetrators, to be very honest. What can we do at cooperation level between different states that have faced the same things, that have the same victims against the same perpetrator? What actions can you suggest to everybody who's involved here? Thank you.
Hello. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much. I don't know if it's right for me to speak on behalf of the OIC. Yes, I do work with some of their organizations as a consultant. But I think your broad question is very interesting. And I think that comes from really a very basic thing. It's going to sound very basic. It's actually lack of faith. And what I mean by that is what Clive, and I must appreciate Clive, I don't think people understand the work Clive does. Clive, not only in this case, but many other cases, has to face the challenge. And he's being very cavalier about his American passport. But even there's people who have been in similar situations as Clive have faced very nasty consequences as a result of the work they do. So I'd like everybody here to give a round of applause to Clive to continue to do this work, not just for Aafia, but for many other people. And honestly, I wanted to speak before the former Prime Minister, but I guess it was fortunate for him that he left to ask such a question as the former Prime Minister of Pakistan, quote, why the American justice system failed. To sit here and watch Clive's presentation demonstrating that the American justice system has been failing for 250 years. And I don't say that as a critique to just browbeat America. मैं इस वजह से नहीं कह रही ये बात. मैं ये कह रहा हूँ कि वो भी इंसान है. और खुदा के लिए हमारी जो अवाम है, our people have to realize that the white man does not have a perfect system. Never has. And they're willing to change because you got people like Clive in that system too. And we hope that judge is going to be that person too. But what that takes is going back to the answer what I said earlier, is faith and doing the right thing. And I know all of you didn't raise your hand when Clive said, would you like $250,000 to sell him out? But the reality is when you're in a situation and someone threatens your family, someone threatens कि आपके बीवी बच्चों को हम कत्ल कर देंगे अगर आप ये गलत काम हमारे साथ नहीं करें. Who here has that faith to stand up to that? Who here has the faith of those muhajirin when they gave up everything to go to Medina? मसला ये है कि हमारे, excuse me, I have to kind of go into that narrative to make people realize कि वो 313 है ना, वही हैं. And आज भी वही इतने ही हैं, 313 माजरत के साथ. And we all love to quote them. Here, the former Prime Minister of Pakistan, we teach our children the famous story of the woman who cried for help. And that's what Muhammad bin Qasim came to this place to make. We teach our children this. And to sit here and ask this question, why the American justice system failed as a former Prime Minister, I'm actually shocked. I'm shocked at the question not being saying why we have failed. And this is the question. Regardless, I will give them even the benefit of the doubt of their ridiculous stories that Clive seems to believe that they actually believe themselves. They don't believe them. They know they're utter lies. They want to put this on a wild goose chase. They're wasting 200 people's time to be in this room that we all know Aafia is innocent. But they'll do it And they've been wasting so many resources. $2 million he mentioned from the Pakistani government for what? कि हमारे tax FBI में हम जमा करते ताकि ऐसी कोई show trial करें? This is something for us to honestly reflect on. Yes, there's politics involved, but eventually facts will come to the top. Even if Clive is not able to do it, even if we don't do it when Aafia is alive, and I hope we do it when she's alive still. And there's many people who face that. And this question really got me thinking that they're not asking the right question, is why Pakistanis have failed their own people. The same Allama Iqbal, the same Qaid, an American will get arrested here, and within 24 hours, the American embassy will send a person to prison, regardless if he murdered how many people or whatever, to ensure he's getting his rights. Unfortunately, and maybe if there's any government representatives here, our entire diplomatic corps, Mazret ke saath, almost 90% of them are not doing their basic duties to just go visit Pakistani prisoners. Just answer the phone call of families. We have 200 almost public students being arrested now and being in deportation because of Trump's policies. Where is the consulate? Where is the embassy? What are they doing for their families? And I'm sorry, we don't realize that we have those same international rights as an American citizen does here in Pakistan. This is the problem. The government of Pakistan does not realize that, or they don't want to realize it. Or there's a sense of colonial fear or whatever it is. I don't know what it is, to be really frank with you. If I have a diplomatic pass and I can do that, this is what the Pakistani says. And I say that, and because you gave me an introduction in that way, I have to tell you why. Because I'm probably the only person in this room that has a shared experience that Aafia Siddiqui has. For 7 years myself. And I've witnessed that justice system from the inside. And I've witnessed that system from the Pakistani government's lack of interest in its own people. That's the truth. The question here is human rights of Pakistani prisoners abroad. Have they bothered? And there's Pakistani prisoners in Saudi Arabia, in UAE, basic rights. Forget the argument, Aafia Siddiqui's case, whatever, just basic rights. Do not prisoners have basic rights? And I'm sitting here ashamed that Clive, a foreigner, has to come here to tell us this shameful statistic that we have so many people on death row. We have so many people under trial, prisoners they're not even been convicted. This is our system. And here the judge is telling them probability is 60%. My God.
Mas, I think the reason why we're sitting here today is because governments have over time failed us. So I know many people are sitting here as representatives of the government. So this is a collective effort for the people of Pakistan. कि अब हम क्या कर सकते हैं? It's already an established fact that the people in power have not done what they were supposed to do for good all 20 odd years. So ab hum kya kar sakte hain? Just I'll circle back to you. No, if I can just take a quick comment from somebody who's sitting in the government.
No, I'm sorry, I don't want to take up the time, and you're right, but the one thing that you said is hum kya kar sakte hain. And I think what Clive said as well, someone's a doctor, some's a lawyer. I don't care, even if you're a lawyer, you're nothing. Aapke paas nahi hai, aap thela chalate hain. Phir bhi aap apni awaaz utha sakte hain. Because सवाल ये नहीं पूछा जाएगा, people are not going to be asked to what extent did we get Aafia free. सवाल ये पूछा जाएगा हम एक से कि हमने किस किस्म की मेहनत की. Not just in Aafia's case. In every question and imtihan that comes before you, did you do the right thing? Period. That's the
absolutely. And that's and I think as Muslims that's true for any situation. कौमों के पास situations आती हैं कौमों को बनाने के लिए. Situation तो अल्लाह ताला खुद भी हल कर सकते हैं. अल्लाह को हमारी ज़रूरत नहीं है कोई situation हल करने के लिए. It's only a test for us कि हम अपने आप. We have Mr. Sher Afzal Marwat sir with us. Thank you very much for staying back. I wanted to give you a quick comment. Sir, I have high regard with you. Of course, you're a politician now, but as a senior member of the judicial system also, and you've been known for very brazen and bold stances in your judicial capacity as well. It was interesting when we were looking up for talking points for you. It was highlighted on a lot of pages that you very openly criticized the Islamabad High Court judges for not challenging the interference of ISI in a lot of matters. Let me be bold enough to say that. it's an open secret at the moment at this platform, especially that a lot of obstacles in Dr. Afia's release are because of quote unquote na malum forces or very much malum forces, as I can say. Well, that's stopped working because of extraterritorial forces, I think. Given your circumstances, sir, इस वक्त आपकी position के अंदर, what would you suggest? किस तरीके का bold stance government ले सकती है? क्या rights हमारे पास हैं? और citizens इस वक्त क्या situation में कर सकते हैं? Especially in the government sector, internationally हमें किस तरीके से इस चीज को pursue करना चाहिए?
Thank you so much. First of all, let me make a comment that I have given 16 years of my life to the bench, and equally 16 years of my life to the bar, making a total of 32 years. And human rights, particularly the criminal trial, has been the subject of my area of practice. I've gone through the resume of the facts enumerated in this two-page booklet, and I have challenged in appeal many verdicts in which the accused were awarded death penalties and life imprisonment. But ultimately, the superior judiciary has acquitted every such person who was even remotely entitled to a premium of doubt. If these are the facts, what I see, I'm shocked to deplore the status of the United States judiciary, because if the case against Aafia Siddiqui is based on only surmises and conjectures, as it appears from this, I just wonder how, Mr. Clive, better you can explain how seeking or getting justice for Dr. Aafia in a case which is based on such facts, which are not facts indeed, could not succeed in the superior judiciary of the United States. Like if the superior judiciary of Pakistan can deliver, where in fact justice, even in these days, present a very gloomy picture, but still as a lawyer, I believe that in this justice system, we can get the innocent acquitted. This is my, belief in my justice system, despite all what is going on at the moment. So I just wonder how come, because with the advancement of the DNA scientific technology and the use of the latest devices, how, like it is a case of utter failure to get justice for an innocent.
I'm going to be preaching to some converted here, but who knows this? I'm going to tell you what the US Supreme Court has held. In Herrera versus Collins, the United States Supreme Court held that the mere fact that you're innocent is not a reason under the US Constitution to set you free. Now, you're a lawyer. You try and explain that to any of these people. I'll tell you this.
Tereni